Ooh. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. There we are. I was like frantically searching for our little banner. Hey there. Hello, hello. Welcome to Soul2Soul. We're back another week to chat about there's so many things, you guys. I had that like look on my face because we were just in deep conversation before we went live. And so who knows what's going to emerge. But I'm Joy Ross, and my co-host here is the beautiful
Ame-Lia Tamburrini. So great to be here with you, Joy. I love these weekly connects. And it just feels, it's amazing actually how long the week feels between our last one and this one. Like, I feel like that was a really long time ago.
Oh, me too. I missed you.
Yeah, I miss you too.
So you guys, we're back. Hey, maybe somebody's watching the replay and you've never seen us before.
Mhm.
So for you guys, maybe who are new to Soul2Soul, we show up every week, Ame-Lia and I, to just have real, raw conversations about whatever's on our heart, whatever's on our mind. And often those are topics that maybe are a little controversial or sometimes difficult to navigate. And that's one of the reasons why we started doing this show, is because we were watching and observing the landscape of society late last year, actually all last year. And it was late last year when we began really discussing with each other how we were not okay with that. We were and we are not okay with being silent or being muzzled or being afraid to speak our minds and talk about the things that often people don't want to talk about, those topics that sometimes make people feel uncomfortable or make people feel like, ooh, I've got to walk on eggshells because I don't want to say the wrong thing or use the wrong terminology. And we're not down with that. And so we decided to create this forum also because we weren't okay with people becoming divisive and rude and obnoxious and mean to each other when you're in conversation with another person who has a different opinion. And it's like, well, why is that? We should be able to, as mature adults, talk about things that are on our minds and do it in a way that we could still be I'm just going to say one, excuse me, with this throat thing, and let that suffice for the remainder of today. But yeah, why is it not the case to be able to have conversations, talk about difficult topics, talk about sensitive topics, have a different opinion than others, and everybody respect each other as humans, be kind to each other, because kindness is just a good thing to be in the world. Like, we never have to get to a point where we hate other people because their opinions differ from ours. At least that's our feeling about the matter. That's what we believe. So part of what we are wanting to do each week with Soul2Soul is model what we would like to see more of in the world. So I think that about covers,
Mm.
right? Why we're here, why we show up every week and do these shows, right?
Yeah, 100%. I was just thinking about my nephew, Jack. I interviewed him on my podcast, Circle of Change. And I was talking to him about kindness because I had just done these kindness circle tours in the summer.
Mhm.
And that was all about essentially what you're talking about. It was like bringing this concept of we have the responsibility to be kind. And how do we do that? What gets in the way of that? And how do we step back into what do we really want to contribute to the world instead of putting the responsibility of peace and harmony and kindness on other people, like our leaders or somebody else, like with not realizing that our leaders are simply representing us. They're
Mhm.
representing the collective consciousness. So that's what the kindness circle was all about. And my nephew Jack, I was interviewing him, and it was like, Jack, what's kindness? Like, what do we need to do to be kind? He's like, being kind is kind. Like, just be kind. Be nice to people. Do nice things. Like, say nice things.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I thought, yeah, it's really that simple. And it's
Yeah.
not, because there's so much in the backdrop, and we've just become really unconscious. And I think we're just calling people
Mhm.
into consciousness by
Mhm.
having this conversation.
Yeah, it's like, how about we get back to the basics?
Mhm.
Humans relating to other humans,
Yeah.
uh, and respecting other humans just because we are, not because we are anything in particular, right? Not because of how much money we make, or not because of the number of followers we have on social media, not because of the color of our skin, but just because we are human. Therefore, hey, I'm going to be kind to you. I'm going to respect you. I'm going to treat you with dignity. How about that? I
Mhm.
mean, really, kindergartners understand that, right?
Okay. Yeah, we could all be schooled by kindergarteners, yeah.
Yeah. As you were talking too, Ame-Lia, another thing that I really love about us doing this show is it gives me an opportunity, because I do a lot of work professionally in environmental justice, climate justice, economic justice sort of arenas. And in that professional setting, just quite honestly, because of my role, again, as a consultant, sometimes it's just simply not appropriate for me to engage actively in the discussions that my clients are having with their stakeholders, because that's not my role typically in those settings. I'm there to either facilitate, or I'm there to support my clients in whatever it is that they're doing. Maybe I'm there to train on a topic, or really stick to the scope of the contract in terms of whatever they've hired me to do, which is never be a part of this meeting that we're having with community members who feel unfairly treated, and voice your opinions, Joy, as an individual. I'm never asked to do that. And in fact, usually it's in somewhere in writing that that's not what I'm there for. I'm specifically there to be a neutral party, right? So as I'm doing this work though, I do have a lot of opinions. I have a
Mhm.
lot of opinions on the injustices that do happen, that are real. Like, it is a fact. This is not opinion. There is documented scientific evidence, medical evidence. It's a fact that uh, many low income communities, many indigenous communities, many communities of color, whatever that means, everything along the spectrum of color. So whether it's Black or Latinx, or uh, any other form of brown, right? Black and brown people, those communities do disproportionately suffer environmental
Mhm.
hazards, pollution, health risks posed by those things, climate injustice, economic injustice, access issues, whether it's access to food, access to transportation, access
Healthcare.
to healthcare, right? And so I'm not okay with that. It bothers me. I've been in this work for decades. And so at times I wonder, why are we still having conversations 20, 30 more? Like, there were people who, even when I was just like a baby, who were advocating for these things, right? It's like, why are there still conversations and questions about whether there is injustice? Like, really? Do we not
Mm,
know? And I guess that's really on my mind today because I'm sure maybe some of our listeners might know, especially if you're in the US in particular, that today is the funeral for Tyree Nichols. So speaking of injustice, just across the board, he was a 20 something year old black male who was brutally beaten by five black police officers um, in Memphis, Tennessee last week. And it just again is another example of injustice, right? I'm like, what? How how is this okay? How is this not like a major, okay, everybody come together and unite and let's solve this. Let's fix this because again, to me it comes down to humanity, right?
yeah.
And none of us should be okay with any of us being mistreated.
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to be, oh, well, I don't really care about it because it's not my tribe. What? But it's a human, regardless of color, regardless of zip code, economic status, regardless of whether it's some person that none of us even know or some famous person that all of us, it doesn't matter. It's a human being, right?
Mhm.
Humans being treated unjustly. That's what's on my mind today and my heart.
Yeah. Thank you for placing that here in this space. I think it's important that we have these conversations in the context of what's going on in the world, both in your consulting world and what you're witnessing there, and then with this incident with Tyree. So, just all the love going out to
Yes.
those families and the community members that were impacted by this.
Mhm.
Did you wanna say something on that? Sorry. No.
Yeah, no, you must have read my mind, or maybe I made a sound because when you said love to the families, I was like, oh yeah, absolutely. Most importantly, right? And prayers
Yeah.
and for him, his family, and every single person right now whose heart is heavy
Mm,
because of these things that I'm bringing up. Because when I think about all of this, it's like, well, what can be done? What can a person like me do? What can a person like
mm,
you do? Sometimes we can feel like, wow, I don't know. And like, will this ever change? And when I get to feeling like that, I'm always reminded that, wait, one of the most powerful things that any of us can do, but often it's one of those things that we sometimes are like, well, I guess all we can do is pray. It's like, no, it's not. Oh, well, there's nothing else to be done. So, as a
mm,
last resort, let's pray. It's like, no, prayer is one of the most powerful and effective things. So, I'll turn there, right? Like on a positive solution oriented note. So I'm glad that you said that because absolutely I am praying for uh just humanity today and his family and any other family that's now experiencing trauma because maybe they had a family member who was brutalized and then having to see this brings up their old and maybe not so old wounds, right?
mm.
So prayers out to anybody that is hurting for any reason related to injustice.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I There's 2 thoughts that are on my mind right now. One is around the role of the facilitator, that's where you started, and
Mhm.
2, because 'cause I'm also a facilitator and I've thought a lot about this.
Mhm.
2 is, police, and in terms of people who are grieving today, there are police folks that are grieving today as
Mm,
well. That There this is heartbreaking for those that are in the system that are really trying to work to reform it and deal with the systemic racism and the trauma that is present in these first responder organizations.
mm,
There are folks there as well, and so my heart also goes out to the police officers that, um, are impacted by this. So I wanna name that, and also so in terms of the role of the facilitator and in terms of actions, like, what can we do? We all have our jobs in the world, and they all have titles and roles, and maybe there's contract language to tell us how we need to be,
mhm,
and I find myself showing up a lot in circumstances that, there are underserved communities and there are very privileged communities in the same room.
mhm,
And what I've gotten really clear on is that I'm not neutral as a facilitator when I come into a space, because for me, that wouldn't be me stepping into my role of creating the change that I really wanna see in the world. So that
mhm,
doesn't mean that and so I guess I wanna say on that, that my experience is that we live in this world where, our muscles are, like, overdeveloped in the white, middle to high class, um, cisgender population. Like, we know how to be and we know how to advocate for those folks because that's what our whole world is structured around. And we're in the process of really growing our muscles, learning how to look through other world views to come to the table so that when I step in a room, I'm clear that I'm there to raise the voices of the folks that we don't get to hear from that often because we need to flex those muscles. And I'm also here to create a safe space so that everybody can be present and hear the conversation, knowing that people will get activated in the moment, and that we'll have those comments about, "Oh, is this really going on? Is there still environmental injustices, social injustices going on?"
mm,
Those people have to have a space where potentially they can ask those questions, but then be lovingly, compassionately challenged and asked to really think about things in a different way.
mm,
So I've been really working with that as a facilitator because it wasn't okay for me to be like neutral, knowing that in my body I'm not neutral. I'm a human being and I have certain things, and I'm there to facilitate a good conversation between people, and I really want people to hear one another. So I think I can be both and. Um, it's definitely something I've been playing with.
mhm. I love that you brought that up. That takes us into more of a professional conversation. I wanna chime in because I'm sure there are people who watch this who might be in similar lines of work,
Mhm.
that we are, right? So let me clarify, right?
Mhm.
Let me start there. So when I said, "Hey, in these settings where I am facilitating often, and specifically there to be a neutral facilitator." Okay, so for me, in the work that and I say I, it's actually my company, Apex, and the work that my business does, sometimes we're facilitating logistics,
Mm.
meaning we are actively engaged pre-event, whatever the event is, right? Whether it's a large conference or a small meeting, whether it's a meeting like interdepartment or like within an organization, or whether it's a public meeting for whatever reason, public meeting to give a presentation or a public meeting because my clients and in this area, economic climate justice, many of them are government entities, right? So, or whether they're having these sort of formal public meetings that have a set structure because that's dictated essentially by law in terms of the order of the meeting or whatever. So a lot of times my facilitation comes into play in the form of meeting with the usually the hot, like the project managers, the people who are running things, and sometimes their bosses, giving input and advice to them, bringing like some of the what you said into their thinking to help them frame and structure the agendas so that they know, oh yeah, okay, it is important for every voice to be heard. So a lot of times for me, in the work that I do, all of that comes into play in more of a consultative role,
Right. Yeah, yeah.
um, and helping them to structure their presentations, uh, helping to craft and develop the agendas, specifically taking into account all the things you mentioned and all the things that I know from decades of being in community engagement sort of work. Like you need to have a space, there needs to be an opportunity. Every voice, at the table is important and all of that. So that's sort of what
Mm.
I was loosely thinking about. And sometimes me and my staff are in the room literally to just document and take notes and observe what's going on and then report on that in some form or fashion. And we're not actively uh, engaging in what's happening in the room, but we're specifically there to observe and
Yeah.
then point out, things that for consideration next time, things that we notice, what could be improved and that sort of thing. So that requires different types of skill sets, I
Mhm.
think, and an intentionally different focus than, when you're standing in the group at the table, uh, having a more vocal role, right? So for me, even in those cases though, Ame-Lia, so this is interesting. And it's interesting too, because a lot of the work that I'm doing, there's always some element of black and brown, right? Injustice. And I am a part of that group, right? A brown person. Even in those instances where, say, it's a small group and it's like people are in some breakout and they're being asked to discuss a topic, identify some suggestions or potential solutions, and that's being workshopped. And I am there to help facilitate and keep on track. And hey, okay, notice those things that facilitators notice, right? Like, oh, these three people haven't said anything. So wait, hold on, everybody. Joe, Jim and Susie, do you guys have anything to add? So even in that role, I have not, it's interesting. I've not been inclined to say, oh, well, here are my opinions. I'm going to throw these into the mix.
Mhm.
Maybe because I'm typically not a part of the community, their community, right? Like this might be, somewhere that we travel to engage people who are dealing with a local issue related to pollution from a facility 2 miles from their house, and I don't live there, right? I'm 5 states away, so I'm there in a professional capacity. It's about what do they think,
Oh, yeah.
not what do I think, right?
Yeah.
So that's and that is difficult too. It's difficult for me always because you're hearing these stories, you're hearing what's impacting people. Yeah, maybe that's a question. You guys listening, if any facilitators out there, or if you're in similar lines of work as we're discussing this, I would love to hear your comments. Like, how does this come up for you guys? If you're maybe professionally in a work setting and some of these uh issues regarding humans and injustice ever arise and you have a professional job to do, how do you guys navigate? Have you ever been in a situation and you had an opinion, um, but it wasn't about your opinion. It was about
Mm.
those specific community members and what they think and what they wanted. How did you navigate? I'm curious.
Yeah. I wanna clarify, I do not put my opinion in the mix. I create the space for all people
Yeah.
to be seen and heard. So that's I think we're on board there in alignment with what the role of the facilitator is in those moments.
Mhm.
Um, and maybe there's been 1 or 2 situations where I put
Yeah.
my own view in there. And yeah, for what it was worth. And I thought about it afterwards and knew it wasn't necessarily appropriate. So, it is a balance. It's constant work in your body to just
Yeah.
be to remind ourselves that, yeah, we really are there to, extract the voices in the room. And I think that is my primary role. And, that doesn't mean I don't have my own, mm,
Mhm.
I'm gonna say biases, coming in.
Mhm. This makes me wonder about newscasters.
Mhm.
I just thought about that, right? It's gotta be tough for them too because they're humans and they report and sometimes they editorialize depending on uh what the platform is, but it's I would imagine it's gotta be tough for them to report on stories like the Tyree Nichols story, for
Yeah.
example, right? And I'm sure being human, if you have a pulse, you feel when you hear about these things, but to not
Mhm.
be able to share your own personal opinion has gotta be extremely difficult, I'm guessing.
That's why people become those folks and us too, like, we have podcasts and we have books that we write. We have
Yeah.
other spaces where we can express those good soul friends around us where we can just be, honest and debrief and really have the conversations that are in our heart. So, yeah, I think it is interesting.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah.
I had this little
Mhm.
visual, right? Now
Mhm.
that we're talking about this, I would actually love it if and again, a lot of these meetings that I'm sort of referencing are typically government. So whether it's federal or municipal, which might be, at least in my mind, that's like a different animal because they're governed by rules and regulations and whatever. Um, they have a little more, mm, things are a little more strict and a little less room for just leeway, right? A
Mhm.
lot of times. But I would love it if in one of these meetings somebody ever said, hold on, Joy, what do you think?
Mhm.
I mean, in those public meetings, right? Because I absolutely would share very profound thoughts, which I do share with the clients separately, right?
Mhm.
I'm not shy about that. It's like, hey, you guys, you hired me. And that's something that I think as I've gotten older and a little more experience under my belt, I've gotten way more comfortable really just being confident to it's like, "Hey, I'm here to advise. This is why you hired me. This may
Mhm.
not be what you wanna hear, but" and then I'll express, "I strongly advise. Has anybody reached are you guys actually talking to the community? How can you create this program or this whatever and not have their input?" Like, I love doing that. I feel an obligation.
Mhm. Yeah,
I used to
absolutely.
not do that early on in my career, and then I would just, like, come home with stomach aches. You know what I mean? I would, like,
Yeah.
leave meetings and I'd be like, "Ugh," and, like, just talk, over 5 glasses of wine with friends about, "Oh my gosh, this work, it's so" and be, like, depressed, but now I'm like, "Mm-mm, I'm too old. I'm too I got too much experience. I know too much
Mhm.
about the injustices because 'cause I've been in this, and yeah, I'm gonna speak my mind, and if you don't like it, I guess don't hire me the next time."
Yeah. Absolutely. That's kind of one of those checkpoints that I now use, like, just in those initial stages with new clients to see the openness of really listening, to the experience that I bring into the room, which is all I can ever bring. I'm not gonna say I'm right. I'm just gonna say based on, 20 years of doing this, this is what I've noticed. So take it or leave it. But, you might suffer if you don't take this advice. And always, always learning because every situation is so new. So yeah, yeah. But I hear you. It's been a journey of finding my voice in that regard as well.
Mhm,
Just
mhm,
the certainty, I think. I was gonna say confidence, but I think certainty is the word. Um, to and uncertainty just comes from life experience and being
mhm,
in the room over and over and over again.
mhm. Do
Mm.
you find that when you are more candid, that way with clients that that it actually works in your favor? That they actually
Mm.
care what you have to say and they're appreciative of it more so than having a negative reaction?
Now, yes, and I think that's because I show up differently. So, early days, I would bring my opinion into the room with the clients, but it would be, like, from this defensive, like, "You need to listen to me," I need to prove myself point of view. And in my having done more of my own healing journey and really showing up more aligned with my true loving self and really being clear on my intention for all my interactions, that has shifted. So, yes, people are more open because I'm like a safer space to be around and also just opening that door for just the energy that I bring in, I think creates a different outcome on the other end. Yeah. What about
Mhm.
you? What have you noticed?
Yeah, I have, similarly, I hadn't thought about it in this way until you answered my question, but I have to say the same. As a result of me doing a whole lot, and I'm still
Mhm.
in I'm a lifer, okay, on a personal development, and improvement journey, but absolutely, I relate to what you said in that looking back, when I was first starting out and, very clear and confident, and I love how you differentiate confidence versus certainty because I think there is a difference. Early on, when I was very confident about what I knew and what intellectually I was bringing to the table, I was less certain, and therefore I probably came across in all those same ways, right? Like, "Oh, you're gonna," it was like more, aggressive, because it was rooted in some insecurities under the
Yeah.
surface. But now I bring a totally different energy into spaces because I don't feel like I have anything to prove. I'm not trying to prove anything, nor do I feel insecure when I'm in rooms, uh, because more than anything at this point, professionally and just in general, I'm very sure of who I am. So, like, there aren't
Mm.
question marks internally about my identity, and I love and respect people, so I'm not bringing any weird energy, in that regard either. I'm not intimidated if whether it's a CEO, and I don't feel superior if I'm dealing with somebody who's only got 2 or 3 years of experience. I'm like, "You're a human being, and I don't care what your title is, I'm gonna treat you with respect." So I think that energy goes before, like, people can feel that, right? And therefore, when I'm saying something like, "Ooh, I would really advise this or that," I think it just comes across differently and it's received differently. It's more appreciated. People don't feel like it's an attack on them because
Yeah.
I'm not attacking them.
Yeah, that's a great juicy point just for the listener, for anybody right now, because you started this talking about why are we having this conversation on a weekly
Mm,
basis?
yeah.
And I think everything that you've just shared that we've been talking about is so important for those difficult conversations. It's like checking,
Mhm.
how are you showing up in the space? I think so often, I've been guilty of this for sure, that I want others to be the thing that I'm not being first.
Mm,
And the change maker, the gladiator comes into the room being that thing that they want to create. So if you want a more harmonious relationship, show up with harmony. If you want to be in a relationship where there's no love, how are you bringing love into your conversation? So it's really flipping it. And I find, and you know this, like we're both soul sisters in like change from the inside out.
mhm.
That's where we have to continuously bring ourselves back to, because and it is work, because we've all grown up in a conditioning that said, "Oh, no, those people, those things have to change out there. We have to fight for change out there." And
Mhm.
really, we need to fight for change in here and do everything we can, and yeah, it's lifelong. I don't ever wanna stop this work because it brings me so much more joy and so much
Yes.
more fulfillment and connection and, like, capital L life, like, it's amazing, and no, it's not easy, but,
Mhm.
you know, there's people like us to be here and support you and your own circles, and that's so important too, is to find the folks that really will, see you in the work
Mhm.
and lift you up when you need it and just hold you when you need it, and also give you some honest feedback when you need it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, much love. I love everything you said, and much love to just all of you guys who are watching this, who are right now
Mm.
in your journey of personal development. Because you're right, Amy-Lia, it is not easy, and I don't know if it ever gets easy. I can honestly say I've been actively learning, studying different things, and working on, myself and taking things to God in prayer, and really becoming more and more open to the reality of, oh, there's still stuff. Okay, 20 years, and it's like every day there's something to learn, right? So there's constant growth. It never, I don't think, gets easy. It's never easy. It is absolutely worth it though. So I just
Mhm.
want to encourage and just love on our brothers and sisters out there watching this, who are also in some
Mhm.
stage of the journey of just really wanting to be the best you, and continue to develop and grow. And on those days where maybe the days aren't so great, maybe it's a little tougher than others, you're not alone, and you're not the only one. And tomorrow will be a new day. It does get better.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree 100%. Even yesterday, if I think about it, like I had to lay down partway through the day, and I had a little cry when I did that. And when I got up, I was like, "Okay, I can take the next step forward." But my soul, I needed to just retract and like
mm,
feel the emotion, be with what is, and honor that. So often we want to push through that. For me, it's helpful just to be with it and honor it and hold space for it. And then, today's a whole new day, like you said. That's a
mm,
common thing in the addiction world, like one day at a time. When I was going through my cancer journey, I was like one day at a time, one minute at a time. And
mhm,
that's really life. Um,
mhm.
yeah, yeah.
So we'll be back here. Sometimes it's 1 week at a time.
That's right. 1 week later.
We'll be back here next week,
Mm.
and I'm gonna take your that last thing you said, Amy-Lia, because I'm like, oh yeah, my heart was a little heavy about all this stuff. coming into the conversation today. So I'm going to take my own encouragement and do some prayer and allow myself, if I feel like maybe what I need too is to just have a little cry. Because you're right. There's not only is there nothing wrong with that, sometimes that's exactly what is needed.
Mm. Yeah.
So,
Oh, thanks for this conversation today, and thanks for joining us today out there. And if you're watching the replay, leave us some comments. Let us know what is sticking out for you, whether it's if you're a facilitator, we'd love to jump into that
mhm.
conversation with you, or just what's going on for you, or even if what's in your heart as a result of what's happening in the world today. We'd love to hear.
Yeah.
And yeah, see you next week.
Yeah. Thanks for watching, you guys. Love and peace as always. See you next week.
Ciao.